Hello everyone, and today we're gonna talk about Xbox 360 emulation in 2022 here. And again, we have quite a few options. Quite a few things have changed since we last looked at this video in 2021, ironically enough. Again, the official option we're going to look at, again, is the Xbox One and the Xbox Series consoles. This is Left 4 Dead 2 running on the Xbox Series X. So again, emulation has been expanded in the Series X. You now get things like FPS boost. You did get resolution boost as well on the One X, but now we now have FPS boost. I should point out that Left 4 Dead 2 doesn't support FPS boost. Only a handful of 360 games got FPS boost. It's mostly the Microsoft ones. Of the games that I have that I own, I've seen Fable Anniversary Edition, the Gears of War games, the 4 that were released on the 360. So Gears 1 to 3 and the Judgment. And Fallout New Vegas was the other one that I found. So I don't know exactly how many have FPS boost there. But yeah, most of them. Left 4 Dead 2 runs at 60 FPS again. So we've seen some games like Red Dead Redemption that got a resolution boost, but not a frame rate boost. I should point out that games that did have a resolution boost, if you use the FPS boost, you will not get both the resolution and the frame rate boost. The frame rate boost is only for the basic base resolution version. So if it was 720p before, it will still be 720p. Likewise for the Xbox One games, they will still be whatever 900 to 1080p mostly they were. So you won't get the resolution boost. So if you turn the FPS boost on, to turn the FPS boost on, you just go into the compatibility settings, and if it's compatible, FPS boost will be highlighted. If it's not highlighted, it's not compatible. That's the best way to tell for it. So FPS boost will boost the frame rate, usually from 30 to 60. Occasionally you'll get games that will be boosted from 60 to 120, although I don't think any Xbox 360 games are supported for 120 hertz. I think a couple of Xbox One. I know Xbox One games. Battlefield 1 was one of them that got 120 hertz boost. I can't remember the rest off the top of my head, but if you enable FPS boost in that game, it'll still be 900p at 120 hertz though. We should point out. But yeah, so there has been big breakthroughs in terms of PC emulation that we'll talk about in this video, but we wanted to touch on the official Xbox emulation because it is running under emulation. Backwards compatibility has now been discontinued, sadly. The last batch of games came in November of 2021. But it's sad to see back compat go entirely. So they brought a few Xbox 360 and original Xbox games to the Xbox consoles again. And that was, they said it was the last batch. It is a shame though, because they are acquiring Activision and they have acquired Bethesda of Microsoft. So it would have been nice to have seen some of those games, some of those Bethesda and Activision games come to the Xbox Series X. Some of the older games, some of the older Tony Hawk games, they'd have been quite cool. There's quite a few good ones on the original Xbox. Would have been nice to see them come. So hopefully Microsoft will revisit it. So we're now going to look at the PC emulation, which is far more exciting than the Xbox emulation, the official emulation at least. So we'll take a look at, we're going to be looking at mostly, it's going to be Xenia Canary because it's had a big breakthrough when it comes to emulation. So we're going to take a look at some of the PC games running now. Okay, so we've got Red Dead Redemption 2 running on Xenia Canary. This is running at 1440p with unlimited, VSync off, we should say, which does unlock the frame rate. The frame rate sits at around 64 FPS. It kind of caps out. I guess that's the in-engine cap for the Rockstar. Was it the Rage engine? The Rockstar Advanced Game Engine is what Rage stands for. But yeah, Red Dead Redemption 2 is a bit of a challenge, particularly for the GPU. in this game. 1440p is kind of out if you want unlimited frame rate, but the frame rate is pretty good. Cutscenes tend to be the biggest issue. With the RTX 3080 Ti that we're running here, maxing out at 1440p. Again, we're using the resolution, the integer scaling, so it's 720p with a 2x2 scale, so 2 times on the x-axis and 2 times on the y-axis, which gives you 2560 by 1440. If you increase it 3 times, you'll get 4K. So you'll get what is it, 2160p? I can't remember, 3840 by 2160. There you go. Which is 4K. A bit beyond the RTX 3080 Ti, which is a bit of a shame. I take it it's going to be a bit beyond the 3090 as well, I'm imagining, because there's not a massive difference. The same with the 3090 Ti. It's only about 10% better performance you get out of the 3090 Ti. Maybe the extra VRAM will help. Who knows? But yeah, so you need quite a high-end GPU to run this at a higher resolution here. Quite taxing on the GPU, but it does actually run pretty well. On Xenia Master, we looked at the last time, but Xenia Canary has had a massive performance uplift. There has been a massive breakthrough with that. So Canary tends to be the emulator of choice now in terms of I think it sacrifices a little bit of compatibility, but does give you really nice performance here. Again, we are mostly above 60 FPS. This is a first run, so it hasn't built up the shader cache. We always have to start again with these versions, because that's why we always show early game footage, because basically we don't have time to play that far into the game. But the further you play into the game, the more it builds up the shader cache as well, so it doesn't have to compile the shaders as the game's running. So the game should run smoother as a result of that. So that is much better for the game there. Ends up running. The further you go into the game, the smoother it will run, basically. So we'll take a look at Gears of War 3 now, because Gears 2 still doesn't work, unfortunately. Okay, so this is Gears of War 3, again running on Xenia Canary. It is running at 1080p. We're using the non-integer scaling upscaler, I guess, for this. So we're running at 1080p. We're using unlimited frame rate, so VSync is turned off, but this is capped at 62 FPS, as was typical for most Unreal Engine 3 games of the time. It was called the smoothed FPS on the PC. You can see this in certain games. The original Mass Effect, Borderlands 1 and 2 had it. Batman Arkham Knight, and obviously this carried over to the consoles, which had 30 FPS caps in place with VSync enabled. So I guess it was just an Unreal Engine 3 thing. As you can see, it runs reasonably well. Integer scaling just doesn't work. It causes too many graphical issues with integer scaling. Some games will cause graphical issues. We'll look at some games, or we'll look at Forza Horizon, which I forgot to turn off the integer scaling for that. So we'll show you some of the graphical glitches that it can create. Again, because it's just a 2x2 grid that it's scaling up by, and sometimes creates issues for certain games. Again, but Gears 3 runs a lot better than Gears 2. This is, nicely playable. A few issues again. The shader cache, as it builds, you will get a nice smooth FPS. Areas where it drops as well. There are areas where the frame rate will drop. I think this looks good. And it runs really well as well. Again, has the smooth FPS cap. You could remove it on the PC version of the Unreal Engine 3 games. But the opening level is pretty good here. There's a lot of action going on here. You're defending the hangar from the Lambit, as it were, the glowing locust, if I remember correctly. Gears 3 was an awesome game. I think my favorite game in the series was Gears 3. But yeah, everything looks pretty good here. It'd be nice if we could actually get an official PC port of all the Gears of War games, because we've got Gears 1, Gears 4, and Gears 5 is what we've got on the PC. Gears of War Ultimate Edition got released on the on the PC. But Gears 2, 2, 3, Judgment, don't really care about. But 2 and 3 were good. 3, this was my favorite in the series. I like the Horde mode in 3. 3 was really good here. Had some nice set pieces as well here, and it was a really good game. This runs, again, perfectly fine here. Again, for the frame rate options are pretty good. I guess we could put a 60 FPS cap, but we're using a VRR monitor, so 62 FPS does pretty nicely. It's nice and smooth. So it's not really an issue for me running at 62 FPS. I guess you could use NVIDIA control panel or Riva tuner statistics server to limit the frame rate if you wanted to there. But again, pretty nice here. Yeah, again, this runs fairly well. Right, so moving on to Metal Gear Solid HD Collection. And another game that runs pretty well. Again, we've got the VSync on here because if you turn the VSync off, it runs at like 300 FPS. Weirdly, it's capped with VSync on at 61 FPS, which is kind of weird. This is, again, 1080p that we're running. No integer scaling here. I didn't try it with integer scaling to see if it would work or not. But yeah, Metal Gear Solid 3 runs pretty well. The only thing about this game is to get Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3. So you get Metal Gear Solid 2, 3, and Peace Walker in this collection. The only thing is if you've got an ISO and launching the game from an ISO, then it will be quite difficult. It does crash if you just launch the ISO and then select the game. What you have to do is to extract the files from the ISO, and you have to launch the Xbox executable files. So what you'll do is when you find the files, you'll go in and you'll see mgs2.xex and mgs3.xex, and I think you'll have the default .xex. So just launch whatever game you want to play. Like this is Metal Gear Solid 3, for example. I just launched mgs3.xex and it will run fine. If you launch the ISO, it will launch with the game select screen, and then when you pick the game, it will just freeze there. But if you launch the individual executable or Xbox executable file for Metal Gear Solid 3, it will run fine as well. No real issues here. These are PS2 games that are running. Peace Walker was a PSP game. That runs fine as well. I don't have any footage of that. But yeah, Metal Gear Solid 3 looks good and runs good as well here. We're tranquilizing some crocodiles because I don't fancy getting eaten. You can also die in the mud. Metal Gear Solid 3 is the best Metal Gear Solid game, I think. A lot of people liked... I like Peace Walker. Peace Walker was decent as well. But I like the fact his trousers get all muddy. That's awesome as well, when he's been in the mud. If you stay too long in the mud as well, he will drown. Little snake here. Naked snake. You can die in the mud here. You see him sinking deeper as he goes in. You also need to tranquilize the crocodiles, or they'll eat you. So, be prepared to trank them as well there. But yeah, this game runs pretty well. It looks amazing as well, and this is probably this is the best Metal Gear Solid. There's a snake there. I'll shoot that snake. Just shoot the snake. Thought against it there. It didn't bite me though as well. So yeah, snakes were many of the animals that you could eat in Snake Eater. I don't know how you catch the crocodile to eat the crocodile though. I don't know, because I don't know how you would do that. But anyway, the game is a nice looking game as well. I don't know if this ran at 1080p by default, but I'm running it at 1080p, and there's no real issues. There was issues on the PS2 emulator running this game, I remember. But yeah, there's nothing, no real issues so far. I played about an hour of this because it's awesome, and it's Metal Gear Solid 3, and it is, again, the best game of that kind of era. That PS2 era was an amazing era. And I know a lot of people love Metal Gear Solid 2, but I just love 3. I think Peace Walker was really good as well. So anyway, we'll move on to another Xbox game then. Alright, so another Microsoft game, Fable 2 then, again running at 1080p. With unlimited frame rate here. Again, it runs. This does have actual unlimited frame rate. There's not like an arbitrary engine cap like Red Dead Redemption and what's it called? What was it again? Gears of War 3, should we say. But yeah, this doesn't have a cap, which is interesting because you can actually use it as a benchmark then for your PC, which is interesting, or how your PC is going to run the emulator. Frame rate is good, north of 60. VSync on gives you 30 FPS. Again, this is 1080p, and there's no real issues running this one as well. Again, it runs perfectly fine. Fable 2 was quite an early 360 era game. I think it was 2008, so a few years into its lifespan, but still pretty early on. And yeah, it runs pretty well. We get to choose our expression here. Of course, we're going to go for the fart expression. Everybody hated it. Of course, you're going to pick that. I mean, what kind of... Your actions have affected your purity. Nice. But not the purity of the emulation, though, incidentally enough. Yeah, so it runs pretty well. We got a gold piece for doing that. A few little hitches and stutters here and there. Again, this is a first run, so you're going to get the odd one frame stutter. But frame rate is, drifting north of 100 FPS occasionally here. It's a bit unstable. If you don't like an unstable frame rate, again, I suggest a frame rate cap. We'll kick that chicken, because why not? Can be a chicken kicker. Isn't that one of the nicknames you could get in Fable? Was chicken kicker? You could get chicken chaser. Chicken chaser was one of them. You could be arseface. That was one I remember from the original Fable. The original Fable on the 360 emulator on the Series X has FPS boost at least. So, but the PC version, of course, has its own FPS boost here in Fable 2 here. So yeah, arseface was the original, in the original Fable. You could buy that as a nickname and all the NPCs would refer to it. I love the humor of Fable anyway. Would love to see the fourth game in the series, Fable 4. I don't know about Fable 3 as well. I didn't try that one, unfortunately. But yeah, Fable 2 is, again, pretty nice, and it works well. So there's not really much to say about it. Right, so this is what happens when the integer scaling just doesn't work. So this is Forza Horizon at 1440p with, again, the integer scale. And you can see by the radioactive wheel rims and the radioactive diffuser that we've got here that's kind of freaking out. It's an LED diffuser that we've got on the back of the car. Could be a new thing. You can see how all the cars are flickering in and out of existence. This is, again, the scaling. Those cars are radioactive as well, and it's just not a pleasant experience, to be honest. You can see how the wheel rims are doing it on the other guy's car there, and eventually our car flickers in and out. So you can see how resolution scaling is, or the integer resolution scaling is not the best solution there, unless you like radioactive wheel rims. Maybe it's a thing. Maybe it'll be a thing in the future. But you can see here, we tried the different views, but again, look at the car, again, in the distance, just flickering. The textures are just flickering in and out of existence. Should point out that changing the resolution to 1080p fixes this. Right, so here is the same clip with, you can see the resolution's lower, but the frame rate's a lot higher. So this is the same clip with the non-integer scaling. As you can see, the wheel rims are correct, and the diffuser at the back is correct. And Flint here in front of us is correct, the correct color of car. It's no longer a Fallout, Forza Horizon Fallout crossover. Whoa, it's smashed head on into there, but, that wasn't too bad a damage there. You can never beat this guy, which is an issue here. But yeah, you can see here that there are no real issues with the cars now. It is more playable. So I just left this in here just to show you the difference. And the frame rate is higher because the resolution's lower. Which is nice. So you're getting, again, frame rate in the hundreds of FPS. This is Forza Horizon 1, should point out, in case you're wondering which version it is. I didn't like that sign, so decided to destroy it. And again, he's cheating as well, so I might as well cheat. But anyway, we'll look at a game that doesn't run very well. We'll take a look at Halo 3 next. Right, so Halo 3 then, not much has really changed. Again, the 30 FPS mode is pretty terrible. You can try it with unlimited frame rate, but the game speed is tied to the frame rate. So just get the Master Chief Collection if you want to play Halo 3 on the PC. It runs fine, whatever frame rate you want, really. It's a game from 2007, so on modern hardware. Like, I was running it on my old RTX 2070 Super, and you got 1440p at 144 hertz, 444 FPS. No real issues with it. So yeah, I would recommend this. The frame time is just all over the place. The biggest problem with it is just inconsistent frame time. That's really the problem. With VSync off, it does get to 34 FPS, but the game's speed is just wrong. Pressed the wrong button there. That's why I deployed the shield in the middle of nowhere. In case you were wondering why am I deploying a shield there. I'm used to this on the PC. I never liked this on the 360. It never ran well on the 360 on real hardware. Apparently the Series X and the Xbox One consoles fixed the frame pacing issues. At least. But again, just get the Master Chief Collection 4K 120 on the Series X. It'll run as well, and on the PC it shouldn't have any real issue running at all. So there you go, Xbox 360 emulation in 2022. It's massive improvements, really. We've seen especially out of Xenia Canary. That has seen a big breakthrough just recently. It was just in August of 2022. That we had the big breakthrough in terms of performance. Doesn't fix everything. Again, Halo 3 is always going to be problematic, I think. But again, if you like Halo 3 and you want to play it on a PC, just go for the Master Chief Collection. It's available on Steam and Game Pass as well. So just go for that. Again, the frame rate is a lot better because it's a PC game and it can run at whatever frame rate you want, really. So yeah, just go for that. In terms of the Xbox hardware, yeah, it has improved. I mean, we've seen the FPS boost is a big thing. Only available on the Xbox Series consoles. We should point out Series S and Series X. The Xbox One does have like resolution boost for a few games. Like Red Dead Redemption, we've seen 4K 30 FPS, but you can do 1440p 64 FPS on the PC if the hardware is up to it. Again, need high-end hardware to run Red Dead Redemption 1 on the PC. It's a bit of a shame. The PS3 is better than the PS3 version, which can do resolution scaling better, but is stuck at 30 FPS, so it is up to yourself which one you want to choose with RPCS3. In terms of 360 emulation versus PS3 emulation, I think the 360 emulator is certainly more GPU heavy than the RPCS3. RPCS3 is more CPU heavy, which makes sense because the PS3 had a better CPU and a weaker GPU, whereas the Xbox 360 was the opposite. So it makes sense. Again, the minimum requirements, I think, are a GTX 1070. Although that has lowered now because you can now run without the integer scaled resolution. The biggest advantage of that now is, of course, that you can now run at lower resolutions now, so you can actually lower it now below 720p. 720p is the default resolution for Xbox 360 games, but you can run it lower if you've got a lower end PC. Should help out with things like the Steam Deck as well, so it means that, you do need Windows installed on your Steam Deck because Xenia is just too experimental on the Steam Deck, on Linux, should I say. I was going to say on Linux there. So it doesn't work out too well on Linux. So you're always going to have to use Windows. Didn't try Windows on the Steam Deck. Just tried it on the PC. But anyway, so yeah, big improvements here. And that is all for this video. So thank you for joining me. And we'll see you again soon. And goodbye.